Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. This talk is all about sustaining a freelance illustration career in Indianapolis. I know it's such a long title, but I really wanted to get specific about freelance illustration, and particularly here in our great city of Indianapolis. But first, a short disclaimer. I just want to say, first of all, that a freelance career is not for everyone. Yeah, it just simply isn't. And then number two, what works for you may not what works for me, excuse me, may not necessarily work for you. So I'm not telling you to quit your jobs today, or yeah, I'm also not telling you to follow everything that I tell you to do, because I am not an expert at this. I am just simply here to talk about my story and what I've learned these past few years. So a little about me. Inhale, just take a deep breath because it's a long one. My name is Rafael Olivier Montecillo de Rosa. So if you want a cool party trick, say that 5 times in 7 seconds. Trust me, it's a hit, especially if you roll your R's. Actually, it doesn't work, so don't do it. But you can just call me Jingo. It's a much better name to remember. And in case it's hard for you to remember, it's like bingo, but with a J. And I am an illustrator. As I mentioned, I'm also an educator, community artist, urban sketcher, jack of all trades kind of thing. And I've been in the creative industry for 10 years now, and 8 years of which are freelance. So I was also born on the other side of the world, this little archipelago called the Philippines in Southeast Asia, born and raised. And then somehow in my adult life, I moved over to Indiana, particularly here in Indianapolis. Now I live here and I love it. I love working here as well. But some of you might be asking, why Indy? And as I answer this question, I might also be preaching to the choir when I say I love it here because it's relatively affordable, especially compared to the bigger cities like Chicago, LA, New York. And yeah, it's very affordable, especially for an artist such as myself. And we also have tight-knit art and design communities. Obviously, we have Indie Design Week this week. That's just one of the many ways that you can get connected. And I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. And it's just plain awesome. It just is. So how do I survive this lovely life of freelance illustration? I know it sounds a little bit dramatic, but sometimes it does feel like survival. So let's just get to the practicals for now. So first of all, it's all about multiple income streams. So when I first started freelance, I thought that it'll just be this one glamorous thing that I'll be doing for the rest of my life. And boy, was I wrong. It's just not sustainable that way. And come to find out, a lot of artists sustain their work because they have so many irons in the fire. And the best way to describe that would be the portfolio career map, which admittedly, I did not come up with this. Some of you might know this as hustling, but there is a science to it. So a portfolio career map is a concept created by Elaine Grogan-Luttrell, who is a financial advisor for creative individuals, which is much needed, if you ask me. So according to her, a portfolio career map is a framework for organizing income that maximizes your strengths. And by your strengths, I mean the things that you're really, really good at, and match those strengths with opportunities and monetize your work or your time. So, and this portfolio career map is actually divided into 3 components. First one would be the starring role. Starring role basically means this is your thing. This is what you're most passionate about. This is what you would do if you could do absolutely anything in the whole world. It could be a writer, it could be a musician, it could be even as specific as a bass player for a jazz band. But in my case, my thing is being an illustrator. So that's the main component of what I do. Second is the supporting cast role. Supporting cast role is the thing that you do that is related to your starring role, but it's not exactly your thing. It's not exactly your jam. So an example of which is if you're a visual artist and you're also a gallery assistant. So you're able to make connections with artists. You learn how to install work, you know how to curate a gallery show, or maybe you even work at an art supply store. So you get nice discounts and you have access to art supplies. So in my case, my supporting cast role would be an educator. So I teach on the college level at Butler University and Heron School of Art and Design, where I teach drawing and illustration. And I also do workshops around the state through Arts for Learning and at times at the Indianapolis Art Center. Third component, I know it's really small, but the very bottom right there, it's the production assistance work. That third component is the behind the scenes work that supports your starring roles. So this is the thing that you do, but you don't necessarily talk about it because it doesn't describe what you're most passionate about. So this could be your day job. You could be an accountant during the day, or you could be an Uber driver in the evening. But all it is it's what you do to support your work or to support your starring roles. So these three components, they inform one another and they also exist to support each other. But on before that, in my case, in the past, I've done retail work before. And if things get hard again, I'll be willing to get into retail again, for sure. But all that to say, it's about knowing your value. So, and what I mean by that is it's about balancing your income and your time, and also knowing what you're worth, knowing your experiences and knowing your merit when knowing your value. So another thing would be saying no. I'm pretty guilty of this. I say yes all the time because I want all the opportunities. I can be pretty greedy, but I've discovered that saying yes is not sustainable at all. So some examples in the past, if I've been offered a job and I have a million other things to do and have absolutely no time for it, I typically say yes. But really the route to go is to say no to that. And instead of doing that, refer someone else for the job. Not only are you helping someone get some work, but you're also giving yourself more bandwidth and capacity to work on the things that you're already doing and make them even better. Another thing would be scrolling on Instagram for inspo, which, you know, is a word that I kind of hate. But I know we all do that because we're all addicted to our phones. And I've discovered that instead of saying yes to that, I would say no by just using my sketchbook and just create for fun. I've learned that doing is better than looking in terms of finding that creative juice to get things going. Another thing, working long hours or weekends. I know this is tempting and necessary at times, but what if, just what if for a second you consider rest? What if you're able to just enjoy your weekends and spend time with the ones you love, or do things that are life-giving to you? So ultimately, saying no is sustainable. It's about not packing your calendars or doing things that are wasting your time, but instead it's about doing things that are joyful and also restful and also life-giving. Another thing, and probably one of the most important things, is community. Now, before you stone me to death or crucify me, I just want you to know that this handshake is pre-COVID. Just want to let you know. But here in India in particular, it's so easy to get involved and get connected. And there are so many organizations that exist that make that all possible. So quick shout out to these organizations. We got Indie Hub, Creative Mornings, we have AIGA, and of course, Indie Design Week. So shout out to you guys for your work and making it easy for our professionals in the city to get connected. So get involved if you're not involved right now. Another way to build community is establish meaningful relationships, not just relationships, but meaningful ones. So an example of what I would do is I would follow local professionals that I admire on social media and just slide into their DMs. So seriously, it's nice to recognize people for what they do, because they need to know that they're doing good work in our city. Another thing is buy someone coffee and have a conversation outside of networking events. I have nothing against networking events, but I do feel pressure sometimes when I attend those events. So it's much nicer when it's on a one-on-one basis. So buy someone coffee and get to know them genuinely. Another thing that that I would do is become a regular at local businesses and get to know its owners and employees. So it's one thing to support a local business and be a patron, but it's also another thing to actually get to know the names and faces that have created those businesses. But I do want to point out that establishing relationships isn't for personal gain. It's absolutely not. But instead, it's for building trust within your community. It's about establishing trust, not just for them to trust you, but it's also for you to extend trust to others. So you have to be willing to trust others as well as you build these relationships. Now, to summarize everything, things that I've learned, again, these past few years, these 8 short years that I've done freelance, I've learned that a thriving career means knowing your value and when to change it, knowing when to say no and what to say yes to, and knowing how to establish trust and how it can benefit your community. But ultimately, I've learned that art is a service, and what I do needs to be seen within the lens of serving others, because this is about sustaining your community, and being able to sustain the community means that you have to serve others. In my case, whether it's helping brands with their visual storytelling through illustration, or maybe giving my students an extra push to find their creative voice. It's all about serving them and just making the community that we live in a more sustainable and better place. So if you have any questions, I know that was fast and furious. We can take a deep dive if you'd like. We can chat on the Q&A stage. I'll be there for 15 minutes. We can hang for a little bit. If not, you can connect with me. Feel free to shoot me an email, hello@jingodlr.com. I will respond, I promise. And you can also connect with me on Instagram @JingoIllo. Hey, thanks everyone for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Indie Design Week and the Indie Design Week team. You guys are awesome. This was a true treat and honor. Thanks a lot.